Henry Frayne warming up on the long jump run-up. It'll be really interesting to see how he goes. He's such a super talent. I mean, triple jumper, long jumper, he can cross between the two successfully at world level to make finals. And it's great to have him back on the runway.
And there he is, the Frayne Train.
Frayne Train, what a nickname.
Yeah, it's going to be good to see him out. Now, he's got a nice little field to compete against here. There's, what, 1, 2, 3, 4 internationals out here. Which is good to see the internationals come out now. Obviously, quite a lot of them have come out before the Commonwealth Games. But even athletes that aren't competing at the Commonwealth Games, like Japan's here.
Yes.
So, obviously, they're not in the Commonwealth, but they're out here competing, and a lot of top athletes have seen, obviously, the events here, and they've gone, well, other internationals are there, so we might as well come out as well.
It's brilliant. Some Americans here. It's fantastic.
Yeah, we see, look at as Matt Denny gets in the circle for his first official throw. First throw since the Commonwealth Games trials for him.
This is really important, I think, for the throwers who are, and for the jumpers who are competing at the Commonwealth Games, because it's great practice to try and nail that first throw or jump, because come 2 or 3 weeks' time, they're going to be out there with a big crowd, and the earlier you can nail one, the better. And he looks really happy with this throw.
He does. I think that might have been a PB first throw.
Which he's, you know, if that's a qualifying round at a Commonwealth Games, you're straight through. You get to go chill out.
Unfortunately, we don't have anyone working the board, so that doesn't help us too much.
Well,
but if Denny's excited about a throw, it's obviously big.
I reckon.
Well, I think I heard 74, and his PB was 73.37. So,
well, there you go. Well, we're going to send Lynchy off. He's got his joggers on today. He'll jog over there and see what he can find out from Denny. But as we go back to the action, that is the British athlete.
I think Lynchy should just walk. An Achilles or something will go if he tries to get out of the walk.
So that was Chris Bennett there from Great Britain. That looked like it was a fairly decent throw as well.
Okay, so I think Matt Denny's definitely thrown a PB, and I think maybe 74-77. They're saying, which is an awesome throw and does exactly what we were saying that you have to do. You get out there, if you can get that first one out there, even in the final, you throw the first one, and it might be a straight final at the Commonwealth Games. You take some pressure off yourself to get those final 3 throws. So he looked very happy, and so he should be. Personal best, and he's hitting a good form at the right time. It's really nice to see, because Matt Denny is such a great fella. He's an absolute ripper, and a happy Matt Denny, you'll find there's a really happy Australian team, because he's a good character.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's the thing with these things, where when you're out there in the final, if you can get that first throw out there, and it can be a big one, you've pretty much got the other 5 throws to just take a risk.
Yep, exactly.
Just to see what happens. Yep. Just put it on the line and see what you come out with. And you may come out with an absolute monster, as opposed to obviously not getting that first throw out, and then the pressure starts to build every throw that you don't get one out there. As we see Jack Dalton now in the circle. Oh, just releasing that a little too early. Goes straight into the side of the net. Yeah, net there. The red flag will go up.
And you see this a lot at the major championships. The hammer throw in the cage, I reckon it'd be one of the most difficult field events to master. Those cages, they move depending on sort of which way you release the hammer, and they're really narrow. They are extremely narrow, and he has to try and be fast through that circle and know exactly when to release that hammer throw, and he's done it a million times. I mean, he travelled the world last year to try and get good competition and become a more experienced athlete. You know, he's a Victorian, he trains down there in Mentone, but they still have that issue with trying to get it out that small gap.
And the Japanese athlete just gets it out there. It's close to the side of the sector. That was Kashimura. Now, he has a throw of 71.36 coming into this. So another decent throw over that 70-metre mark. So it's good to see that Denny's and Jack have both got some competition out there that are throwing similar distances.
Tell you what, that was a big divot in the grass. You'd want to be taking your dirt along if you're playing golf, made that divot.
Tell you what, the curators, they hate it. They
it
absolutely hate hammer throw.
It's the worst event for the grass job here is amazing. You'll never see more immaculate grass. Canberra AIS infield is pretty awesome, but it's not bad out here. But this is like meteors coming down.
You've obviously never been to Perth, McGillivray
No,
Oval.
I have. It's not bad either.
There is no grass track better.
No, it didn't look like he was happy with that one, and
Walks
it was
out
going to be
then.
short of that 70-metre line out there, which is, if you were listening to the Australian Junior Champs, I'm not great at guessing distances, but now that they've got that line out there, got a bit more perspective.
Or you at least know whether it's over or before that line.
I've got at least a metre either way. I've got an official's length. I can tilt them to the side, use them as a perception of where it landed.
There's Bennett back in the circle.
Yeah, he threw around 73 when I popped out to have a look earlier.
73.14, I
Yes.
think I heard.
So this will be the first competition for a lot of these internationals, and
Jeez.
absolutely launched it well over the mark there.
So do you know what that mark is on?
That is on
70.
70 metres.
That is the 70? Jeez, well, this is big then.
So he came in with a PB of 76.45, and I think you'll be happy with that one. That is pretty big.
$75.11. Jeez. Woo! Big one there from the British athlete.
It is heating up here in this hammer throw as we see our Japanese athlete now getting into the circle. This is Akane Watanabe. Just losing grip there. But I'm sure Chris will be happy with that one coming into this competition. Again, it's the first competition for a lot of these Commonwealth Game athletes. Some aren't even competing before they actually get into the game. So a lot of those Northern Hemisphere athletes might actually have their first race be the heat or the qualifying rounds. Yeah, it is interesting.
Risky.
So it's out of season for a lot of the Northern Hemisphere athletes, but you know, it works in our favour.
It does. It certainly helps us having a championship in our season.
It's pretty much where Nationals is.
Unless you're an indoor runner, so unless you've been doing the indoor season and actually been peaking for that, to do your double peak in a European, I guess, based season, it's tough to come out here. As you can imagine that if we had a major in October, November, and we're in that phase of training leading into our summer season, we would find it very tough also.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And just even the...
Don't you love that, though? Because that's pretty much what the Australians have to do all the time.
Exactly. Welcome to our world. Even though when we did the Olympics, we did put it down in
September.
In September.
Yeah.
So I suppose there's probably legal rules where you can't actually just shove it in March.
No, and it's obviously because of the television rights. You know, there's lots that go on between Olympics and the television rights to try and make sure that the point where they're put on.
Where with Commonwealth Games, we can throw our weight around a little bit, so to speak.
Yeah.
And make sure that we get it
throw
when we
out
want.
like a hammer throw, just throwing our weight around.
Now,
exactly.
Now, Jack Dalton's got 2 fouls here. So when we were talking about practice, he really needs to get that third throw in to make sure he goes back to training tomorrow, a happy lad.
This is the women's pole vault now, just getting in their early rounds. That's Jade Arbuthnot, a young Queenslander just out there to help out our competition. As we see Suha now from Japan, Tokyo University Club, the big TU on the chest there. And they are running against the grain, as you would say, down reverse finish line to start line direction in the long jump. It's not a bad jump out there in the first round as we cut back to Matt Denny to get into the circle. He's in all black, he's all business. And we'll see where he can get this one.
No, didn't like it again.
No,
the red flag's already gone up, so he's obviously gone out of the circle within the throw because that flag was up pretty quickly.
Now, Chris Bennett's obviously not representing Great Britain at the Commonwealth Games. He's representing Scotland. Now, I'm pretty sure the origins of hammer throw come from Scotland. And I think they still throw it in the Highland Games. So they wear their kilts and, yeah, so it's got great history. I think the first time it was in the Olympics was, the modern Olympics was 1900, so Paris. But,
well, then if that's the case, I reckon we get around Denny, get him out there in a kilt to take the Highland Games hammer.
I think he'd do it.
Oh, another big one from Bennett there as we see TJ Gale on the runway. Getting another one out again. A lot of these internationals, it is their first time jumping out of season. And we'll welcome them. It's actually probably a nice night for them to be welcomed into the country. It's not boiling hot, not like we had in at the Commonwealth Games trials, all of the Australian Junior Championships where it was like pushing 30, 40 degrees. And it's the humidity I don't think that a lot of these countries will be used to.
I still wish it was really hot so that they
oh, definitely. Turn up the heat. What have we done? We're being too generous.
But maybe that's the smart thing to do, like lull them into a false sense of security of a cute, cool night of competition, and then right when the Commonwealth Games comes on, come on, weather gods, just turn it on. You want to have home ground advantage for sure.
Now, if you follow any of our athletes on Twitter, Chris Bennett, he tweeted just this afternoon, he's been in Oz for nearly a week already, and he hasn't even heard John Farnham. Can someone rectify this?
Jeez. Well, maybe we can need to speak to the person doing the music here tonight
and get your The Voice put on.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? That might even spur him on.
Bit of age of reason
to get a PB.
Got to be careful with John Farnham. Let's not put any Sadie on, the cleaning lady.
No, we'll stick to I was going to say the classics. They're all classics.
They're all classics. It's John Farnham. I do remember at the Olympic Games when the closing ceremony was on, and Paul Hogan came out on I think he was on was he on a surfboard? Anyway, Paul Hogan came out, and we were like, all the Australians were sort of looking, going, who is that? And all you could hear from the Americans was, oh my God, it's Mick Dundee! They were all so excited.
Well, I do remember during the Olympics, The Dream, they had John Farnham on when they had to pick a song, and they had the fans come in and write their own song, and John Farnham sang the song at the end for the closing. I still tape that on my VHS. I've probably still got copies at home.
Really looking forward to seeing how Henry Frayne goes here.
You can see they've got a pretty solid tailwind. You can see on his splitties. Well, that's well out there.
Was it a foul? I think he looked like he was well over
Yes,
the
he
board.
was just given the red there, unfortunately. But, you know, first jump, and with this wind, it is picking up a little bit, so that will be their tailwind.
Well, the positive thing about that is with Henry, we didn't see him jump in the finals at the trials. He pulled out. He qualified through comfortably, and then we didn't see him in the finals. Chris Matreski, who's also jumping tonight, won that. So it's just nice to see him jumping freely and looking quite good out there.
Exactly. As you see, Matt Denny, he's probably forgot something here. I don't see a hammer in his hand. Yeah, he's just wearing a glove at the moment, but I think, forgot the hammer. I'll go get that. And I'll be back in here in a few short minutes to maybe get another PB. If you're going to get a PB, you'll need to take a hammer with you.
You'd think so.
Well, yes.
You'd think so.
It's probably one of the key ingredients to a good hammer thrower.
Well, no, I'm sure Denny would have a crack otherwise.
Without one?
Yeah.
And I do love the story with Denny, how he built his own circle in the backyard of his property, I think.
Yeah, how good is that?
It's quite a property.
Do you know...
He lives on Denny Road.
Isn't it fantastic?
There you go.
I mean, it's like I was talking to a few people this week about how good our Australian team is and how good their backstories are. We have so many athletes that the public don't actually know very well yet, and hopefully they get to know them better through these 2 weeks of the Commonwealth Games, because they have fantastic backstories. And Matt Denny, having your own discus hammer shot put circle in your backyard is pretty unique and different. I think the only other athlete that I know that did that was Greg Rutherford, the Olympic champion.
He built himself a pit, did he?
He did, and a proper run-up with the track.
I like that.
Yep, in his backyard.
That is very, very handy. I suppose, well, when your session requires you just to do a small pop-ups or anything like that, why not?
Now here's home ground advantage for the Queenslanders. The rain can appear from nowhere, it can bucket down and then it can disappear, which is going to be interesting during the Commonwealth Games and the field events, because you could have some throwers out there when it's really wet, some heats of 100 hurdles or other events where it's wet, and then all of a sudden 10 minutes later it'll be dry.
See, this actually might even speed up the circle a little bit out there, the throwing circle. A little bit of water out there will be a little bit faster, obviously not as grippy as before, but some athletes do like that. I remember Danny Samuels used to like the Sydney circle where it was a wet circle.
So, are we going to mention what's playing in the background, Ben? Because I think your man out there is pretty chuffed.
He is. So we went and requested a bit of Johnny Farnham.
Yeah.
You're the voice. You know, we got to respect our international visitors when they request something. So we'll send him a tweet back.
I think Australia, you know, we get teased a lot about not having good, great history like a lot of the other countries have. You know, you go to other countries, you touch a brick that's, you know, so old. But, like, Australia's a relatively new country compared to those countries. So, but our history does involve our great music, like John Farnham,
certainly.
our awesome animals that all the rest of the world is scared of.
Yes. And that is one of the first things that a lot of the athletes do want to see when they come out. I was watching Athletics Canada doing a bit of work with some of their athletes, like, what do you want to do when you come to Australia? It was, I want to touch a kangaroo, I want to see a koala, and go to the beach.
Yeah.
And basically, there's and hey,
get eaten by a shark. No, that doesn't happen.
Not often.
It's a fantastic country, Australia. And you know what? It's a long way for these guys. Some of them travel, you know, I think a few of the athletes were complaining about they were leaving their country on Friday and they arrived on Sunday. They couldn't understand where Saturday had gone. And they were complaining
you'll get that on the way home.
Yeah, they were.
You pick that up in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like a lay-by. Get that in duty-free when you leave, when you go back home. I'll just have 2 of those and an extra day.
Well, the rain's coming down really heavily at the moment, but it's, you know what, I think it's brilliant that the athletes out here are competing in this, because you just never know the conditions that you're going to get at a major.
No, and being Queensland, summer, as you get further north, it's the rainy season. It's the way it is. There's TJ Gale there, one of the Jamaican representatives wearing the University of Technology Jamaica uniform.
Cool.
Now, we're on the outside track at the moment, so for probably the 2 biggest events that have been in this area, the 1982 Commonwealth Games and the 2001 Goodwill Games, this is normally the warm-up track.
Yep.
It's a bit more of it's a boutique stadium.
Oh,
no,
as you see, Matt Denny slipping there. That's the problem when the rain comes down this heavily. It gets quite dangerous in that circle. It'd be interesting to see when it's this heavy if they just hold it off for a little bit.
Yeah, it's making tough work out there. But so tonight we are on the warm-up track. Like we're saying, it's intimate. It's an intimate setup.
It is.
The main stadium is around 60,000 strong for seats. So that is now the warm-up track tonight. So we've switched roles.
I think you'd find, though, that this track's meet records would be quite good, because it's been used for a lot of high-quality events. I know leading into Sydney Olympics, there was a couple of main meets held here and some really fast races. Even domestically that year it was used as well. A lot of A qualifiers for those Olympics.
Yeah, I have seen through the annals of YouTube some 2000 Grand Prix up here.
Yeah.
Some very, very handy fields getting around.
As you can see, the hammer, they're struggling a little bit now with this weather and the hammer slipping, which goes to our point earlier where it's good to get a good throw out early, because then anything can happen and you can relax a little bit. Well, you can try and launch one out further, or you can, if weather happens like this, you're sitting pretty in the position that, you know, you've got one out in better conditions. And some of the athletes who have perhaps fouled early, I know Jack Dalton's had a couple of fouls, so it becomes a little bit more stressful, especially when this weather comes. There he goes, he gets it out, this one. Over the 65 metres.
Now the rain is really starting to come down. Obviously, Henry Singlet doesn't really show it. Looks quite dry there, but it really is coming down here now.
Yeah, it is dumping right now, this rain.
I can't tell you, though, how impressed I am with these guys out there just having a crack, because they do know that this could be the conditions they get while they're out competing. And as an athlete, when you are at a major and something doesn't go to plan, like weather, or you know, you don't feel as well, if you've actually gone out and you have competed in it, it gives you a great inner self-confidence and self-belief that you can go out there and do it when it counts. If you sit at home and you don't compete just because of the weather or other issues, then sometimes that means that, you know, you get to the major and you're not prepared for all conditions. So kudos to everyone who's out there and still competing. Yeah,
and again, those officials out there, they've thrown a couple of extra layers on, but for every one athlete, there's about 3 or 4 officials out there getting just as wet, and probably even more so.
Yeah, and especially the ones out in the middle of the sector. So they obviously don't have the ability to be able to come in and get a jacket like some of the other ones have been lucky enough to do, the ones that are around the circle.
Yeah.
So, no, I feel for them. It's a bit rough out there, standing in the middle of the field, just getting absolutely drenched, because there's no respite for them. So the athletes can duck off. Once they've done their attempt, they're under the tent again.
And they would have brought their spare socks like their mum told them.
And they've got a towel, it's all good. But those officials, and even our volunteers, so we've got a volunteer out there with them, and I think it's a bit rough,
You're going to have to stop the hammer bow in these conditions, you would think.
So
which
what
I think
was it,
they've done.
2016 Rio, where the women's discus qualifying, it was so bad. They did have to pull a pin.
Well, it was interesting on the track too, because the men's high hurdles were on. And I've never seen, well, I mean, it was rain like this, so I have seen it because I'm Australian. But at a major, you rarely see rainfall like that. And so they ran the first 2 heats. I think it was the first 2 heats, or they did run the first heat, definitely. And there was so many issues.
And it's probably one of the ones that they don't, like, you get questions, oh, is it on today? Is it on? It's an all-weather track. But when you've got events like high jump, pole vault, hurdles, and the circular throws, they're the events you don't want to do in the rain.
Well, they still ran I mean, they're still throwing here. And maybe the athletes, you know, they do know that they're all in the same boat, and it's good practice for them to get used to all conditions. But in the hurdles in Rio, they got through the first couple of heats. There was so many issues. Then they stopped it because it was atrocious weather. And then they ran the last heats, the ladder heats, when the rain had stopped. So obviously everyone in the first 2 heats complained, and the first 2 heats had to rerun.
Yeah, I would too, especially if I didn't get that little cue.
But they're disadvantaged anyway.
Exactly.
They're disadvantaged anyway because
also just get another run in the stadium.
They have to have another.
If I'm not going to qualify for a final, I'm just going to protest to get myself into a random rerun heat.
And the big thing about, I guess, the athletes out here competing tonight, so it's not really about the performance or the distance or the time or anything like that. This is about competition. Getting competition practice in before the games. That's the critical part of this. So Dalton's stepping into the circle now, but he's probably not going out there thinking, oh, I've got to throw this as far as I can. This is about going through your processes that you want to have in place for the games. Making sure everything's in order. Making sure that anything that comes up at the games time, you're ready and prepared for it.
Again, definitely having a little bit, you can see the frustration start to set in, but these guys for this competition, they are guaranteed 6 throws.
Perfect.
So again, this is round 4. He does have 2 more throws, and you can see Danny come in with the towel.
So I have a question. When you do that in a competition, what if an athlete throws 3 fouls in the first 3 and then throws their personal best in the 4th? Does it count?
Well, I think it's if you say if you have more than 8, or if you have 8 or less in the competition, it's effectively you've already picked the final.
Okay, yep.
So they are competing in a final.
Yep.
They don't normally reorder the competition at a HP meet.
Yep.
So it's not really an issue. And as you can see out there, they are doing men's and women's hammer throw at the same time. It is something they've been doing in the Diamond Leagues this year as well.
What do you think of that initiative?
I like it.
You think it makes it more exciting?
I do. I think so. And it means you get them all out there together, and all the discus fans, they're there at the same time. We did it this year on December 16 in the long jump. We had the men's and women's long jump going concurrently. Huge crowd, big scoreboard, music pumping, and they all got to enjoy it at the same time. So any long jump fan could get there straight away.
I tell you what, I'd really like to know how far Jack Dalton's throw that he did get out there was, because it looked like it was pretty close to 65 metres, and that's around...
It's something that we'd be looking for to build on, I'd say, in that 65.
Now, it's good to see this rain subsiding a little bit. It's definitely not anywhere near as heavy as what it was before.
Okay, I might see if I can go find out what's happening in the hammer with the distances. Or send a runner. Lynching, no.
Well, last time I went out there, as soon as I got there, he called it out over the loudspeaker.
Yeah, he did, I know.
Although GT, I think he's offered to be our runner today,
Perfect.
so he can go out there. And
so
although he was quite adamant, I'm not a runner. I think that was more in reference to his ability than anything else.
Gosh, he's like you too. He used to run 400s as well. Didn't he go to a World Juniors?
Yes, he did.
Yep.
He did.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know how far Jack's thrown, and for anyone back home who wants to know.
So 66.00 there for Jack Dalton. That's his best so far.
Well, that's pretty good, because I think his personal best is 68. So, you know, he's been having trouble earlier on this comp, so that was pretty good. You know, because I think that's another thing. Track and field has so much mental angst about it sometimes, and I can imagine in field events it'd be just as bad. Like with track events, mentally you go out there, you stand behind the blocks, and I don't know about you guys, but the hardest point is probably getting from that call room to the track, and just when the whistle goes and you're behind your blocks and you're on your marks, you know. But with field events, there's so much that you have to go through out there. You're watching what everyone else is doing. You've got more attempts than just the one. But if you don't nail those first 2, you've still got to refocus and tell yourself that you can still do it. Even if everything has gone wrong and everything's telling you, oh my God, it's not my day, I'm completely stuffing up. So if Jack has, you know, missed a couple of throws and he's still able to get one out of 66 in these conditions, it's a really big positive to take away heading into the Commonwealth Games.
Now, while they just towel down, we're going to throw to a quick ad break, and we'll be back with plenty more here at the Summer Baths Grand Prix in Brisbane.